Autumn turned to winter. When I was preparing to enroll in the National Defense University, she still wore a cold face as she warned me sternly. She said once I got to Jinda, I should handle my own housing. Told me not to keep running to her all the time. She knew she'd get jealous. I didn't even lift my head. I just replied faintly, saying fine. He didn't suspect at all that I had already changed my application. And continued speaking. Also said that on the first day of school, there was no need for us to get the marriage certificate anymore. That childhood promises didn't count for anything. I hesitated for a moment, then obediently nodded. I didn't explain to them that I was going to a military university thousands of miles from home, and had already given up on him. I would never again have even the slightest expectation for him. After all, he and I had the same goal: to completely rid ourselves of each other, to never meet again. Just yesterday, I went to the high school office. I told Teacher Chen I had made up my mind, that I planned to continue studying. But the quota for Peking University, I wanted to change it to the National Defense University's intelligence program. The late autumn wind carried a sharp chill. My thin frame stood tall and straight. My eyes were filled with unusual determination. Teacher Chen was stunned for a moment, then exclaimed with wild joy that I had finally come to my senses. He thought I was going to give up my spot at Peking University to let it go to someone else out of self-sacrifice. But transferring to the National Defense University's intelligence program was an extremely special case. My identity had to be crystal clear. I would have to conceal my name and background. He asked if I had discussed it with my family. I told him there was no need. I could decide for myself. Hearing the word family, a flicker of pain passed through my eyes. But I quickly let it go. Once I completely disappeared from their world, maybe I'd never have anything stolen from me again. Just because my uncle drowned in the river saving me, my parents brought my cousin home, saying I owed him a life, that I should learn to yield. In order to make it up to him, my parents gave all the good things to my cousin. Even my fiancé ended up falling in love with him. Both familial love and romantic love had been taken from me, and now, to take away my Peking University quota, my parents forced me to agree. Even Ji Yunshu suggested exchanging it with a marriage certificate. I spent the entire night thinking on the small bed on the balcony. Finally, I saw things clearly. This time I would not give in again. Instead, I chose to sever ties with them, and no longer seek a future in their world. The wind burned red like fire. As I walked along the chilly street, my silhouette carried a deep loneliness. Around me were blue-collared workers heading home after their shifts. They rode their black bicycles, their faces lit with happy smiles. The noisy, bustling world felt completely out of place with me. A jeep pulled up beside me, blocking my way as it stopped. The window rolled down, revealing a cold, smiling face. Uncle Ju looked thoroughly impatient. He asked if I had explained things clearly to the school. I stayed silent. I had of course made everything clear, but not according to his instructions. Not to give up my place at Peking University, but to go somewhere he could never find me. Before I could answer, Song Jingnian stuck his head out from the backseat, his head wobbling slightly, hands full of items. He called me cousin, and said Sister Yunshu had helped buy him lots of things. Clothes, shoes, even a radio. He said if he was going to Peking University, he couldn't be looked down on. I stared at the necklace hanging from Song Jingnian's neck. My face drained of color. It felt like my heart had been struck through. The sting of betrayal spread through every vein. That was a gift left to me by my grandmother, also a token of my love to Ji Yunshu. I never thought Ji Yunshu would favor Song Jingnian so much, that she would actually give him that necklace. Ji Yunshu noticed my gaze. A flicker of awkwardness passed through her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. Told me not to take it to heart. Anyway, it's not something all that valuable. After we get the certificate, I'll buy you something better. Bitterness swelled in my chest. The necklace itself wasn't worth much. What mattered was the love it represented. But in Ji Yunshu's mouth, it became utterly insignificant. Of course, because Ji Yunshu never truly loved me. so she never cared to cherish it. When Song Jingnian heard the word certificate, his eyes flashed with a strong sense of triumph. He deliberately put on a wrong expression. He said, "Sister, it seems cousin isn't very happy. Is he mad at me for taking his Peking University spot? I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have taken something that belonged to him. I guess I deserve to be unwanted." Ji Yunshu couldn't bear to see Song Jingnian upset. Her face turned cold and dark. She shot me a vicious glare. She said Jingnian had already suffered enough. That I had everything. So why did I still need to fight him for more? She comforted Song Jingnian, saying, "Don't worry, the Peking University spot is yours. No one can take it from you." She told me to walk home and reflect on myself. And only after I figured things out could I apologize to Jingnian. Otherwise, she would never forgive me. She stepped on the gas and drove off decisively, leaving behind a cloud of dust in her wake. From the backseat, Song Jingnian flashed me a triumphant and provoking grin, his face full of gloating satisfaction. I choked and coughed violently from the smoke. See, I hadn't said anything, hadn't done anything, yet everything was still my fault. I stood frozen in place for a long time, until a maple leaf drifted down onto my shoulder. Its chill pierced through my thin clothes like a blade. I once had nowhere to go because of my parents' favoritism. It was Ji Yunshu who gave me a place in this world. With her, I once believed the world still held love. But now, even that woman, the one meant to spend her life with me, had changed her heart. The sky above hung heavy and gray. I gave a bitter smile. Parents who favored the wrong child. A fiancé who turned away. I wanted nothing to do with any of it anymore. As soon as I returned home, I heard laughter and cheerful voices from inside. I looked up at the sky. The sunset clouds looked like a twisted, mocking face, sneering at my lonely silhouette. Ever since my parents brought Song Jingnian home, I had become utterly redundant. Just because my uncle died saving me, I had to repay it with everything I had. From toys at first, to clothes, and even the love of my parents. In the end, even my fiancé left me. I drifted through the world like a ghost with no place to rest, silently standing at the door. The laughter inside pierced into my heart like a knife. Blood seemed to seep into the floor beneath me, forming a shadow so vast it swallowed me whole. I pushed open the door. The noise inside ceased instantly, as if my presence had ruined their perfect little gathering. Under the soft evening glow, my father glanced over and pointed toward a short stool nearby. On it sat a single bowl of rice, with only a few vegetable stalks inside. Meanwhile, on their table, there were not just fish, but beef too. Since I was young, my parents always said my cousin was growing, so they gave him the best food. They forced me to be the mature one, to give up my seat, to give up my share of food. Now I could only live in the broken little room on the balcony, eating leftover vegetable scraps. But my parents never once considered that I was only half a year older than Song Jingnian, and I needed nutrition too. With a look of annoyance, my father stood up, deliberately placed a piece of fish in my bowl, then smiled. He said this was my favorite dish, and told me to hurry and sit down. I kept a blank expression and said, "Mother, I'm allergic to fish. The one who likes fish is my cousin." This time, my mother didn't snap at me like she usually did. Didn't say I was being difficult. Instead, she looked into my eyes with rare softness and asked if I had spoken to the school. Told them I'd given the Peking University spot to my cousin. She said I had good grades, so I could just take the exam again next year. I remained silent. My mother's face darkened. Her tone turned harsh. "How could you be unwilling? You owe your cousin a life. Giving up the Peking University spot is nothing. You should learn to be sensible." Even though I had gone through this many times, my mother's favoritism still cut deep into me. My father set down his chopsticks and suddenly slapped me across the face. His expression filled with fury like I was his enemy. How did I raise such an ungrateful son? "If you won't agree, then get out of this house right now. I have no son like you." My mind buzzed as I sat down. A red palm print bloomed on my cheek, facing my parents' furious glares. I felt like 1,000 blades were slicing through me, and I trembled uncontrollably. Song Jingmian's expression softened. He said, "Please don't force cousin. It hurts me to watch. Maybe I just wasn't meant to study. It's not cousin's fault. It's just that no one ever loved me." My parents quickly stepped forward to comfort him. They promised they would make me give up the Peking University spot, and in the future, they would buy him lots of gifts too. Only then did Song Jingmian smile. He looked at me, his cousin, whose face had turned pale. He said, "I never meant to steal what's yours. If it bothers you, I can leave." My father exploded in rage. He glared at me with venom and shouted, "Are you happy now? You've thrown the whole family into chaos. Hurry up and apologize to your cousin." I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, let my gaze sweep across them all. This so-called family bound by blood was now doing everything they could to push me into ruin. Just as my father stepped forward to strike again, Ji Yunshu finally spoke. She said I had already agreed to give up the Peking University spot and would explain it to the school today. Only then did my parents' expressions ease. They huffed dismissively. My mother thought for a moment, then looked at me and said, "At least you understand your place. Since your cousin is going to school, you'll go find a job, earn his tuition money, and remember you owe him that." I stared blankly at my mother, the woman who gave birth to me. How could she say something so cruel? But she didn't seem to care about her son's reaction. She gave the command in a tone that allowed no refusal. "After the summer break, you'll go to work. You're just idling at home anyway." My father nodded in agreement too. After that, the whole family began discussing how to help Song Jingmian host a banquet. After all, getting into Peking University was a glorious event for the family. No one paid attention to me. I was like the trash bin of the household, mentioned only when needed, and thrown away without hesitation when not. I didn't even know when I had collapsed onto my bed. My chest was numb with pain. Living in this loveless home, the suffocating pressure made it hard to breathe, even after more than a decade of life. All I had was this frail body barely held together. The damp bedsheets reeked of mildew, while Song Jingmian had a bright, spacious room, filled with all kinds of toys and sweets, bought from the best department stores. I could only sleep on a narrow balcony, where wind and rain battered endlessly, where winter snowed relentlessly. For 10 long years, even in the scorching heat of summer, my heart remained cold as ice. I gazed up at the night sky, thinking that in just one more month, I could finally leave this loveless place. Since this family didn't want me, then I would disappear forever. That night, I had a dream. I dreamed of my younger self, held close in my parents' arms, treated with such care, their eyes full of love. My sister, 2 years older, pinched my cheeks and said how adorable I was. It felt like I was soaking in a warm spring, and I never wanted to wake up. But the moment Song Jingmian appeared like a nightmare, my parents' faces twisted in fury. They shouted and screamed at me. Even Yunshu turned her back on me, walking farther and farther away. I cried out, begging father, mother, and sister not to abandon me. I chased after them in desperation, but beneath my feet was a bottomless abyss, and I fell into it. Despair and agony wrapped around me. I couldn't struggle free, yet my parents and Yunshu never looked back. They gathered around Song Jingmian and walked into the distance, while I sank forever into an endless, suffocating darkness. A burst of strange fireworks jolted me awake. I opened my eyes. I thought I could no longer be hurt by them, but deep down I still longed for affection. For approval, thankfully, it was just a dream. A jeep rolled into the courtyard. When I saw the tall man step out, I quickly went downstairs. He said, "I heard you got into Peking University, Shuyuan." Yes, the tall man was Yunshu's adoptive father. The woman beside him was Gu Zhao. She was once saved by my father-in-law, which led to the arranged child marriage. Shejongwo was probably the only one who ever truly treated me well. Shejongwo patted my head, then glanced at his daughter beside him, and nodded, saying at least you've got some sense to celebrate Shuyuan's success. But Yunshu frowned and said, these fireworks weren't for Shuyuan. He said he didn't want to study anymore, and that he gave the Peking University spot to Jingnian. He said he'd focus on studying in a few years, and wouldn't let anyone down. Shejongwo's face darkened slightly. He was just about to scold her, but I stopped him. I forced a smile and said, you just got back home. Please rest for now. I'll explain it to you another day. I didn't want Shejongwo digging into the matter, or he might uncover the truth about my enrollment in the National Defense University's confidential program. I just wanted to leave quietly and not get entangled with them any further. Shejongwo's expression stiffened. He glanced at his daughter and stormed off angrily. Only Yunshu and I were left on the scene. Yunshu's face was blank. She said, don't tell my father about us registering for marriage just yet, and about giving up the Peking University spot. You better come up with a decent explanation. Understand? I asked softly, head lowered. She didn't respond. Yunshu was willing to marry someone she didn't love just to help Song Jingnian get into Peking University. It was truly admirable. He was still young and couldn't handle emotional blows. You'd better not mention the marriage in front of him. And yesterday when I told you to apologize, why haven't you done anything yet? Before I could answer, Yunshu pressed harder. Jingnian will be heading to Peking University soon. You should give him some cloth coupons and food stamps. At least show some genuine well wishes. Seeing Yunshu care so much for Song Jingnian, it felt like a boulder was crushing my chest. I couldn't breathe. Do you think I still have any of those coupons left? With all the affection from you and my parents. He never lacked any of it. Yunshu fell silent. Only then did she seem to realize my situation. A flicker of complexity crossed her expression. Don't worry, since I promised to register the marriage with you, I won't go back on my word. Yunshu could only use marriage to console me. Yunshu, sister Yunshu, do you really want to marry cousin? Yunshu's face changed drastically. She snapped her head toward the doorway. There stood Song Jingnian, holding onto the doorframe, his face pale as paper. A look of anguish twisted his features. This isn't what I thought. Before Yunshu could explain, Song Jingnian slammed his head against the wall in a frenzy, his face contorted in pain. I don't want Yunshu to marry cousin. I like sister Yunshu too. Song Jingnian looked utterly devastated. Yunshu panicked under the sudden chaos. She shoved me aside and rushed to hold Song Jingnian in her arms. My parents came out as well, and when they saw Song Jingnian's state, their faces all changed drastically, as if thunder had struck the household. The three of them rushed Song Jingnian into the car as fast as they could and sped off toward the hospital. Just before leaving, Yunshu cast me a cold glance. Her voice was icy. Did you see that? You provoked Jingnian on purpose, didn't you? I didn't expect you to be so obvious. The disgust and contempt in Yunshu's eyes were unmistakable. It felt like a heavy blow landed squarely on my chest. Whenever Song Jingnian acted a little upset, the whole family would revolve around him, and all the blame would fall on me. The angry expression on Yunshu's face kept flashing in my mind. I told myself not to grieve over a girl who never loved me, but my heart still ached deeply. Song Jingnian's little tricks were actually easy to see through if you paid attention. There was a time when Yunshu couldn't stand the family's favoritism towards Song Jingnian. Back when I was in utter despair, she had burst into the house and taken me away, then declared to the entire courtyard that no one was allowed to bully me from then on. Back then, Yunshu truly treated me well. I didn't know when it started, but Yunshu began to change. Her hatred towards Song Jingnian gradually turned into pity. Song Jingnian felt like my nemesis. He always had a way of stealing everything from me. I watched the car drive off with indifference. That was the last time I would feel sad because of Yunshu, and the last time I would mourn for this cold, loveless home. From now on, I would live for myself and dedicate my youth to building my country. I returned home and began cleaning out the cramped balcony. Among the piles of old boxes were all the gifts Yunshu had given me. From large wooden puppets to a single autumn leaf, I had treated those gifts as something precious, reluctant to throw them away. But now they felt like garbage. I sorted everything and placed them in the courtyard, then set them ablaze. Along with all the love I once had for Yunshu, let it all be consumed by the flames. Just as the last of the gifts began to burn, Yunshu returned to the courtyard and happened to witness the entire scene. She saw the burning wood, and her face twisted in shock. A wave of unease surged in her heart. There was a tremble in her voice as she stared at me in disbelief. These were the gifts I gave you. Why are you burning them? It was as if something beyond her control had slipped away, and a strange panic seized her. I kept my gaze on the burning wood until it turned to ashes, then slowly turned to face her. Our eyes met, mine calm and expressionless. In that instant, Yunshu seemed to realize on her own that I was going to leave her. I took a deep breath, and as the gifts turned to dust, a long-held obsession inside me dissolved. I would no longer agonize over who our parents favored, no longer torment myself over who Yunshu cared about. None of it had anything to do with me anymore. I would walk my own path from now on. The gifts had grown moldy, so I burned them. I almost blurted out the truth to Yunshu, that I didn't love her. But I remembered there were still more than 20 days left before I could disappear, so I had to endure it for now. Yunshu seemed relieved. She nodded and said burning them was fine too. After all, they weren't worth much anyway. We can just buy new ones after we get our marriage license. I gave a faint smile. We won't be registering our marriage. There is no future for us. Yunshu thought it over carefully and concluded that aside from herself, I had no other choice. So I couldn't possibly leave. Her earlier panic must have been unnecessary. Her expression returned to normal, arrogant as ever, her brows raised in disdain, her face full of displeasure. Don't walk around with that cold face all the time. Jingnian lost his parents. He has depression. He can't take any more emotional blows. You already have everything. There's no need for you to fight. I smiled with a hint of bitter sarcasm. Then tell me, what do I have? The love of my parents, the care of my fiancé. Not even a single decent piece of clothing has ever been gifted to me. Jingnian took everything that should have been mine, and yet Yunshu still couldn't bear to hear me complain. She grew impatient and said, "Don't you have parents? And me too. Jingnian is in the hospital suffering right now. Go and apologize to him." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Jingnian's so-called depression was clearly an act of innocence. Yet they all pretended not to see it. My voice was cold and distant. He already has my parents by his side, and your constant care, plus a whole team of medical staff around him. Do you really think I'm needed there? Yunshu grew furious. How can you be so lacking in compassion? Jingnian's depression is all because of you, no matter what. As his cousin, you should be more generous. You still haven't realized your mistake. Looks like we've spoiled you too much. Yi Shuyuan, don't say I never gave you a chance. If you don't go to the hospital, then let's put the marriage certificate on hold. With that, she stormed off in anger, as if trying to use the marriage as leverage. Thinking I'd submit unconditionally if I went, I ignored her and watched the car drive away. My expression was calm as ever, but back home I started packing to leave, only to realize that in this massive house, there was nothing worth taking with me. Later that night, my parents returned home with stern faces, as if blaming me. Yimu, who came with Jingnian's mother, stood before me, her face grim. "Kyuyu, give Yunshu to Jingnian. He likes her and he's threatening suicide at the hospital. You're his cousin. You should be generous." I always knew Mother Yi was biased, but I never imagined her favoritism toward Jingnian could reach such a twisted level. Still, I didn't expect her to be this shameless. Her words, in the blazing heat, felt like a merciless winter when slapping me in the face. My expression went numb. I stared into her eyes, and my voice turned hoarse. Mother, I'm your biological son. You always told me to give way to Jingnian, and I did. Haven't I given enough all these years? Every new item in the house, every piece of meat on the table, even the New Year's clothes, my room, the milk duck. He got it, I didn't. I gave up my admission to Peking University, and now even Yunshu must be given up. If he says he wants my life next, should I rip out my heart and offer it to him? Mother, am I really your son? I couldn't hold back the fury in my heart any longer, and roared out the question from the depths of my soul. Mother Yi slapped me hard across the face, her expression full of disappointment. He's your cousin. He lost his father because of you. Haven't you already been given enough? Your father was right. You truly are an ungrateful person. This time, whether you want to or not, you will give in. Otherwise, you're no longer my son. With those cruel words, she turned and left. I leaned against the doorframe. The setting sun above my head felt like a face twisted in mockery, as if I were the biggest joke in the world. In their eyes, I must be so lucky and blessed. Not long after, Yunshu returned to the courtyard. She got straight to the point. Yi Shuyuan, Jingnian's mental state is very unstable right now. We'll delay getting our marriage certificate. He wasn't negotiating, he was issuing a command. Fortunately, all the accumulated disappointment had numbed my sadness. With a pale face, I pulled the corners of my lips and said each word with sharp clarity. All right. Yunshu hadn't expected me to not throw a tantrum, but instead agree so easily. For a moment, she didn't know what to say, and stood frozen in place for a long time. I didn't look at Yunshu. My gaze landed on the phoenix tree outside the courtyard, and I recalled when I was 11, I had been framed by her and my parents. They hung me up and beat me until my body was covered in wounds, then cast me out of the house, leaving me all alone in the world. In my deepest despair, I crouched beneath the phoenix tree and wept. It was Yunshu who walked up to me. She reached out her hand with a gentle smile and said, "Come home with me." Back then, he was like a ray of light, illuminating the darkness that was my life. From that moment on, I had someone to rely on and a spark of hope. Yunshu hoped I would get into Peking University and fulfill my dream. So when the college entrance exam resumed in 1978, I began working hard in secret, and finally secured a place at Peking University. I had thought I could always follow in Yunshu's footsteps and be with her forever, but now it all seems like a fleeting illusion. The Yunshu before me had completely changed. She pushed me to compromise step by step so that Jingmian could attend Peking University. She chose to marry a man she didn't love. What a noble love that must be. The moment Yunshu said we should delay getting the marriage certificate, I felt oddly calm inside. I no longer held any expectations for her. Now that she said to delay the certificate, I knew she would soon break other promises too. And when that happens, I will lose the chance to attend school. And Yunshu will never marry me. That much is certain. Luckily, I hadn't given up my spot at Peking University. In just over 20 days, I would be leaving this place of sorrow and heading to National Defense University to completely sever ties with them all. Shuyuan, don't overthink it. Since I gave you my word, I won't break my promise. It's just that Jingnian's mental state is unstable, so I don't want to provoke him. Yunshu told me not to make a scene, but my cold indifference made her uneasy, so she couldn't help explaining herself. I pulled my gaze away from the phoenix tree and suddenly asked, "Sister, do you still remember what you promised me under this tree when I was 11? Yunshu's expression faltered slightly, as if something had come back to her. A flicker of guilt passed through her eyes. She was just about to speak when a guard approached, his expression tense. He said a message had just come from the hospital under the traffic division. Jingnian was hurting himself again. Yunshu furrowed her brows and could no longer afford to stay. She turned and rushed to the car. As I watched the jeep disappear into the distance, I turned and walked back to my room. That narrow balcony, There was nothing left to burn there. The gifts Yunshu had given me were only a few old, thin clothes. And aside from this fragile life of mine, it seemed my parents had never truly given me anything. They once gave a lot, but all of it went to Jingnian. Yunshu stayed at the hospital for an entire week. During these days, my parents and she were all at Jingnian's side. I was left in peace, no longer needing to see Jingnian's disgusting face, nor face my biased parents. I went to see Ji Jiangwo and asked him to help me train physically so I could adapt to National Defense University in advance. Since I had chosen the intelligence program, I knew danger would await me in the future. Ji Jiangwo didn't question me much. He thought I was motivated, and so he taught me without holding anything back. Another week passed. That day, I was training in the courtyard. My whole body was soaked with sweat, but I felt refreshed and full of energy. I had cut my hair short like a soldier. Yunshu used to say she liked boys with an artistic vibe, so I kept a soft, literary hairstyle. But now I was living only for myself. Cutting my hair felt like shedding my old self. Ji Jiangwo saw it and was moved into silence. Now this is the aura of a true soldier. Although he didn't know why I was training so hard, he seemed to have an inkling, but chose not to expose it. Young people should solve their own problems. Though he did mention that an old friend next door was clearly biased, which seemed a little unfair. That friend was often away on missions and couldn't really intervene. But if I ever needed help, he wouldn't mind making things easier for me. And so a quiet life continued for now. Peaceful, at least on the surface. Eventually, I was sent home after a few years, breaking the silence. I was in the courtyard practicing horse stance. When I looked up, I saw my parents and Ji Yunshu gathered around Song Jingnian, chatting and laughing as they walked into the courtyard. Song Jingnian leaned close against Ji Yunshu. Their relationship appeared extremely intimate. My parents pretended not to notice. Instead, they looked pleased by what they saw. Even Ji Yunshu didn't seem opposed to it. But when he sensed my gaze, he seemed to guess what I was thinking and quickly pushed Song Jingnian away. Song Jingnian immediately pouted in displeasure and said, "Sister, do you dislike me now?" Ji Yunshu's expression turned awkward, and he could only continue letting Song Jingnian lean on him. Song Jingnian walked into the house, glanced at me once, and his eyes were filled with provocation and mockery. I kept a calm expression, as if the four of them had nothing to do with me, and focused completely on my training. Before I realized it, an hour had already passed. I finished my training, let out a deep breath, and a rare cool breeze swept across. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the rare sense of comfort in the courtyard. National Defense University. Just then, a trembling voice sounded behind me. When I opened my eyes, I saw Ji Yunshu holding a magazine. A flash of golden light flickered in his eyes. Ji Yunshu had accompanied Song Jingnian back to the room and happened to notice a magazine placed on the small bed by the balcony. It was from the National Defense University. An intense unease surged up within him, so he rushed downstairs to ask me about it. "Why are you looking at information about the National Defense University?" Faced with Ji Yunshu's questioning, I remained calm and didn't explain right away. Instead, I picked up a towel to wipe off my sweat. "Say something." Ji Yunshu grabbed my hand. His body was trembling slightly, as if he had lost the most important thing in his life. I gently pried open the hand I had once longed to hold countless times. This time, there wasn't even a ripple in my heart. I smiled and said I was just flipping through it. Ji Yunshu stared into my eyes, seeing that I didn't seem to be lying, and believing that I would never lie to him. He finally looked relieved. He nodded and gave a light "Actually, there's not much worth seeing. Because your physical condition isn't suited for the National Defense University, it's better to focus on your studies and take the college entrance exam again next year. Anyway, your grades are good. You still have a chance." I didn't confirm or deny it. "Do you really think I still have a chance?" "Father and mother, they want me to work after the summer to earn money to support my cousin's education. I'll be leaving soon. Ji Yunshu's expression changed. He wanted to say something but stopped, as if he suddenly felt guilty for how he had treated me these past days. His tone softened. Don't worry, I won't let you go work. There's no need to worry about the money. I've already prepared a sum. Enough for several years of school. I gave a bitter smile. See, Ji Yunshu and the Song family not only forced me to give up my Peking University spot, but even got the tuition ready. I had to admit, that family really was blessed. Of course, I could see the panic in Ji Yunshu's heart, but I didn't think it was love for me. It was just a bit of guilt. I believed that once Song Jingnian made a fuss, my biased parents would definitely force me to go work and earn money, and Ji Yunshu would remain silent. Fortunately, I no longer cared. Ji Yunshu called out when I stayed silent. Thinking I was jealous, he tried to pat my head, only to finally notice that I had cut my hair short, no longer resembling the artistic version of myself from before. For some reason, even though I was standing right in front of him, he felt as though I was about to vanish. He already had a sense of losing control. Shuyuan, I will marry you. Believe me, I just need more time, just a little delay. Ji Yunshu's tone was firm, leaving no room for doubt. If it had been before, I would have been overjoyed, but now I only let out a faint without any emotion in my voice. My calm and indifferent expression only made Ji Yunshu more uneasy. She looked increasingly unsettled. On the balcony of the second floor, Song Jingnian happened to be watching the two of us downstairs. Her eyes burned with intense resentment. That night, I went to bed early, not just because I didn't want to see my biased parents showering her with meticulous care, but also because I was too exhausted from training during the day. The next morning, I left home and headed to school. Inside the office of the classroom building, I met a man in military uniform. His entire presence radiated a strong, upright aura, one that made people instinctively feel admiration. He introduced himself as a professor from the intelligence department of the National Defense University. Besides handling his assignment, he was also there to escort me to the school. The intelligence department at the National Defense University was unique. It was part of an early admission track, so there was no need to go through the regular process, and there was no official admission letter. Instead, a professor from the university personally unlocked the enrollment and led the student to a secret place for training. Once the handover was complete, the professor told me that he would return in a week to take me with him. On the way home, I kept picturing the professor in his military uniform and felt a deep yearning within me. If I studied hard in the future and served the country, I too could become someone like that. Even though my home was cold and completely devoid of love, I felt hope stir within me again, looking forward to the day I would go to the National Defense University. When I returned to the courtyard, the sky was already growing dark. My parents were nowhere to be found. Back in the house, I saw Song Jingnian sitting on my little bed. She looked at me with a condescending gaze. Cousin, it seems like my sister likes me more. Song Jingnian mocked me with a half smile. Did you see that? As long as I want it, everything you have becomes mine. So why do you even bother staying in this house? You might as well just die already. I had already found a new hope, so I couldn't care less about Song Jingnian's provocation. She had assumed she could agitate me and drive me insane, just like before, so she could laugh wildly at the sight of me kneeling in pain, as if it brought her endless delight. But this time, I remained calm, and to her, it was like punching a pile of cotton. Her face twisted with displeasure. Song Jingnian didn't like this feeling. When she thought about the promise Ji Yunshu had made to me downstairs during the day, jealousy drove her into madness. Even if she self-harmed in front of Yunshu, it would only delay the two of us getting our marriage certificate. It still wouldn't make him truly hers, so she couldn't help but lash out. And my composed attitude only fueled her jealousy further. A flash of lunacy crossed Song Jingnian's face. She grabbed me suddenly, her voice filled with a manic edge. Tell me, if I pushed you down out of jealousy, who do you think they would believe? My face went pale in an instant. I was just about to break free, but she pushed me off with full force. "Help! Don't kill me!" Song Jingmian then slammed her head into the wall. Blood covered her face. Then she rushed downstairs and lay beside me. I had fallen from the second floor. My body hit the ground hard. The pain made it impossible to breathe. Song Jingmian's blood-curdling scream immediately caught the attention of my parents and Ji Yunshu. The three of them rushed over to us. Upon seeing the situation, my parents didn't ask any questions, and father kicked me hard in the stomach, shouting, "How could you do this to Jingnian?" I stared blankly at their ferociously twisted faces. All the explanations I wanted to say suddenly stuck in my throat. I closed my eyes, as if a knife had pierced straight through my heart. "I can't believe your heart could be this vicious. Jealous enough to try to kill someone. You're more despicable than a criminal. I have no son like you." A pair of glaring eyes. He looked at me as if I were his mortal enemy. Then he kicked me hard twice. My aunt held on to Song Jingnian, crying so bitterly it tore at the heart. "I'm sorry, I only stepped out for a moment. I never expected something so terrible to happen. Jingnian, just hang in there. I'll take you to the hospital right away." Song Jingnian's face was covered in blood. She looked like she was seriously injured, but in truth, it was all just superficial wounds. Her screaming immediately drew my parents and Ji Yunshu's full attention, but where they couldn't see. She gave me a vicious, cold smile. I had fallen from the second floor. My injuries were far worse than hers. I couldn't speak of it, and they still kicked me a few more times. My body curled up like a shrimp from the pain. Yet the pain in my body was nothing compared to the wounds in my heart. My parents had never believed me. Even explaining would be useless. They trusted Song Jingmian unconditionally. It took me several long minutes before I could stand up again. My face turned deathly pale, and my body trembled uncontrollably. I couldn't help but glance at Ji Yunshu's face full of disappointment. Song Jingnian sobbed pitifully, calling out to me, "Cousin, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have clung to my sister and asked her to stay with me. I know you hate me. If my death would make you happy, then I'll give you this life. There's no need to make auntie, uncle, and my sister feel sad." I looked coldly at Song Jingnian, watching her performance. Then I saw the furious stares from my parents, and despair swallowed my vision like darkness. I had long grown used to loneliness and sorrow. I was already ready to let go of my parents and Ji Yunshu. I didn't want anything to do with these pathetic relatives anymore. But why did Song Jingnian have to frame me over and over again? Ji Yunshu suddenly slapped me across the face, her delicate face frozen in icy rage. "I told you we'd get the marriage certificate, so why would you hurt Jingnian? He's already heartbroken enough. Do you really want to drive him to death?" A red handprint bloomed on my cheek, and blood trickled from the corner of my mouth. I stared blankly at Ji Yunshu. He was no different from my parents, blindly believing Song Jingnian without question. In their eyes, I was the ultimate villain. I had wanted to explain a few words to Ji Yunshu. I thought he might at least have some doubt. But now I knew there was no point. Ji Yunshu shook his head, his expression full of disappointment. "Someone like you who stops at nothing. How can I trust you enough to marry you? Yi Shuyuan, you are truly disappointing." The three of them didn't spare me another glance and left for the hospital with Song Jingnian. Song Jingnian looked back at me and smiled. That smile was like a demon crawling out of hell. Not until the car disappeared from sight did I lose the strength to hold on. I vomited a mouthful of blood and collapsed. The night was deep and silent. My eyes were cold as ice. When I awoke again, my body had gone numb. I dragged myself back into the house and lay on the bed resting for several hours before I regained a little strength, just enough to apply some herbal medicine. The night was cool as water, but not as cold as my frozen heart. The actions of my parents and Ji Yunshu were like a dagger, stabbing a gaping hole in my chest. The already shattered world inside my mind collapsed once more. I felt like a wounded little dog, licking my wounds alone on the dark balcony. The tears had already dried up, and my feelings had long since gone numb. Only a soulless shell remained. All I wanted was for time to pass quickly. I didn't want to stay in this house another second. This cold and heartless home was like a bloody maw, waiting to devour me whole. I lay on my bed, staring at the night sky, and I miss my late grandmother dearly. Aside from her, no one in this world had ever truly loved me. In a daze, I drifted off to sleep, only to be jolted awake by a bucket of cold water. Before I could even open my eyes, I was suddenly yanked by an overwhelming force and dragged into the living room against my will. My parents and Ji Yunshu had brought Song Jingnian back, even though they were only surface wounds. To them, what I had done was unforgivable. Father kicked me hard without hesitation, his face dark with fury. Yi Shuyuan, kneel down right now and apologize to Jingnian. If you don't earn his forgiveness, you're no longer my son. This house was cold as ice, and my family was even colder. My heart, already battered, shattered once again. I swept my gaze across them all. My parents' faces twisted in disgust and hatred. Ji Yunshu's eyes filled with disappointment, and Song Jingnian's expression thinly veiled with smug satisfaction. These were supposed to be the people closest to me. Yet they hurt me again and again, worse than any enemy I'd ever faced. It was clearly Song Jingnian who caused the trouble, but I was the one being forced to kneel and apologize. In the past, I would have done it to win back their affection, to gain some approval. I wouldn't have resisted, but now I despised my very existence. Why was I born into such a heartless family? Father shouted my name with an ugly look, then kicked me again with brutal force, roaring in rage. Do you really think you did nothing wrong? I crashed into the wall and crumpled to the floor. Blood once again spilled from my lips. Ji Yunshu's face faltered. He looked like he wanted to come help me up, but then remembered what I had supposedly done. A little punishment might still save him, he thought. So he stopped Father from doing more, and gently shook his head. Only then did Father let it go. For a moment, I thought Ji Yunshu might be on my side. But what he said next almost made me laugh out loud. Ji Yunshu frowned, his face dark with disappointment. Seeing the way you are now, I don't think we should get the marriage certificate. If Jingnian hadn't been lucky, he'd be dead from that fall. So as punishment, we're postponing our registration. To make it up to Jingnian, I'll hold a wedding ceremony with him first. I stared at Ji Yunshu in disbelief, trying to understand what he was saying. What kind of punishment was this supposed to be? Ji Yunshu noticed the sarcasm in my gaze. He looked slightly guilty, but mostly annoyed. It's not like we're actually getting married. I just want to make things right with Jingnian. My parents and Ji Yunshu all stared at me, unconsciously placing themselves in front of Song Jingnian, afraid I'd snap and hurt someone. But they were disappointed. Not only did I not explode, I even smiled brightly, spitting out another mouthful of blood. Well then, congratulations in advance. Cousin and cousin-in-law, are you done talking? If so, I'll go get some rest now. I dragged myself with great difficulty, practically crawling to the balcony. I couldn't bear to look at them another second. Song Jingnian feigned hurt. Cousin, when I have the wedding with sister, you'll come, won't you? Even if it's just for show, I'll still be satisfied. I really hope you'll give us your blessing. Father scoffed coldly, don't worry. Even if he refuses, I'll help you choose everything. He thinks he can get away without facing the consequences. Mother shouted at my retreating figure. If you don't show up, then get out of this house. Ji Yunshu didn't notice me at all. As always, he thought my jealousy was acting up again. A surge of unease flooded my chest. He really wasn't going to marry Song Jingnian. It was just for appearances. In his mind, I had lost myself to jealousy. But I couldn't keep going down this path. If I learned my lesson this time, maybe there was still hope. Maybe after the wedding, he'd sit down and talk to me properly. But that one word, cousin-in-law, and the look of relief on his face felt like a needle stabbing straight into my heart. Why did it hurt like this? After that, the three of them ignored me completely. They didn't care if I had died from the fall, or whether I might run away, because in their hearts, I cared deeply about this family, and I loved Ji Yunshu with all my heart. But even in this vast world, there was no place where I truly belonged. For the next 3 days, I didn't argue or cause any trouble. I stayed home quietly to recover from my injuries. My parents and Ji Yunshu were all happily preparing for the wedding. The venue was set at the Bain Hotel. To most people back then, it was an act of extreme extravagance. But to please Song Jingnian, my parents emptied their savings and pulled every string they could. When the wedding day finally arrived, I had already packed my things early and waited for the instructor from National Defense University to pick me up. My parents and Song Jingnian had already gone to the Statron Hotel to welcome the guests. Since Ji Yunshu was the one hosting, he didn't wear a wedding dress. He came to me. "Shuyuin, come with me later, will you? I'm only going through the motions with Jingnian. We're not registering the marriage. Don't worry, I'll still marry you." Ji Yunshu promised me with conviction. Just like that time when I was 11, and my parents threw me out of the house. When I crouched under the phoenix tree outside the yard, he was the one who brought me hope. He was the one who swore he'd never leave me. But how long has it been since then? Ji Yunshu had completely changed. I kept a calm expression and responded with a faint sound of acknowledgement. Ji Yunshu let out a breath of relief. He had feared I'd cause a scene at the wedding today. But seeing me like this, he figured I'd learned my lesson and thought I'd be more obedient in the future. Ji Yunshu insisted on taking me to the Bain Hotel. But when he didn't see the reaction he wanted on my face, he started to panic inside. I remained calm as I answered his every word, as if the person before me wasn't my beloved fiancé, but a stranger I barely knew. Just as Ji Yunshu tried to force me into the car, a guard ran up to say the hotel could wait no longer. Only then did Ji Yunshu give up. He told me I had to attend, otherwise we'd never get married in the future. I watched his hurried figure leave. Expressionless, and carrying my woven bag, I walked out of the yard. Just after Ji Yunshu's car pulled away, the teacher's vehicle from National Defense University entered the yard. The teacher asked if I wanted to say goodbye to my family. I turned to glance back at the courtyard. This place that had held 15 years of pain. I never wanted to stay here again. Those biased parents, that betraying fiancé, I never wanted to see them again. So without hesitation, I got into the car. Once I joined the classified division at National Defense University, my true identity would be erased, and I would spend my life hidden from the world. For the rest of my life, I didn't want to be my parents' son or Ji Yunshu's husband. I wanted to live as myself, to dedicate my life in service to the country. As the National Defense University vehicle passed by the Bain Hotel, I looked through the window and saw my family standing at the entrance to greet the guests. My parents and Song Jingnian were all smiles, basking in happiness. Ji Yunshu's face was flushed with shyness, and a trace of anticipation lingered in his expression. The four of them looked like a perfect match. The car slowly moved on, leaving the hotel behind. The four people gradually disappeared from view, and I was about to start a life of my own. At the entrance of the stage-run hotel, Ji Yunshu suddenly felt something and looked up sharply. But the jeep carrying me was already gone. For some reason, a wave of unease swept through his heart. My parents were all smiles and joy, telling everyone it was a double celebration. Not only had Song Jingnian been accepted into Peking University, he was also marrying the most beautiful girl in the compound. Ji Yunshu felt a little uncomfortable inside. Whether it was the Peking University spot or the marriage, those things should have belonged to me. He had only agreed to everything to help with Song Jingnian's treatment, but hearing how they spoke, It was as if it was all rightfully his. Song Jingmian clung tightly to Ji Yunshu. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking pitiful and aggrieved. Why isn't cousin here? Didn't he promise to come and give his blessing? Or is he angry and doesn't want me to be happy? If I had known it would be like this, I would have knelt before him and apologized. Song Jingmian began playing the victim again. Father's face darkened. He snorted and said I was an ungrateful brat. He regretted ever having me as a son. Unlike Jingmian, mother-in-law nodded in agreement. Shuyuan is so immature. He didn't even come for his cousin's wedding. He used to bully Jingmian too. It was only because Jingmian was so forgiving that he never minded. A few days ago he almost got him killed. And now he dares to show such an attitude. He's definitely going to get punished when we return. My parents reached a unanimous conclusion that on Jingmian's joyful day, I should have shown some decency. Song Jingmian lowered his head and added more fuel to the fire. Maybe he likes sister. I never meant to take her away from him. I just wanted to fulfill my wish to get married. Once the wedding is over, I'll give her back. If cousin's really upset, then let's not hold the wedding at all. His tried and true act of retreat to advance once again ignited my parents' fury. He thought about my desperate and heartbroken gaze, and as he listened to my parents cursing me, Song Jingmian felt utterly satisfied. Ji Yunshu kept staring out the window, but still didn't see me. A growing restlessness gnawed at his heart. He had agreed to take revenge on me, not because he truly wanted to marry Song Jingmian, but only to fulfill his wish. Ji Yunshu believed I shouldn't be so dramatic. He was sure I would understand, but in his mind, he kept seeing the cold indifference on my face. With the wedding about to begin, and me still not arriving in Jilin, Ji Yunshu could wait no longer and began walking outside. Song Jingmian hurried to block his sister. Are you going to leave me? Ji Yunshu suddenly turned around. His icy gaze fell on Song Jingmian's face, and in that instant, Song Jingmian flinched, forgetting to pretend to be sad. He had rarely seen Ji Yunshu look so terrifying. Ji Yunshu's emotions were in complete turmoil. He had a terrible feeling something was going wrong. A voice in his head kept telling him he had to go back. I'm going to get ran. This time Ji Yunshu ignored the people trying to stop him and left without looking back. On the way home, he told himself I must have misunderstood. He needed to explain everything clearly, that he wasn't truly getting married. It was all just for show. He raced back to the courtyard as fast as he could and dashed through the gate, straight to the balcony. Shuyuan, stop being so stubborn. Everyone's waiting for you. Ji Yunshu pulled aside the curtain. The once cramped and damp little balcony was now cleaned and spotless. The small folding bed had been tossed in a corner. The low desk I had used to study sat alone in the center, and on it was a note that said, I don't want this family anymore. Ji Yunshu couldn't stop shaking. Those short lines hit like a hammer, crashing down hard on his heart. He forced himself to stay calm despite the panic welling up, muttering to himself, Shuyuan must be joking, because in his memory, I had nowhere else to go and couldn't possibly bear to leave father, mother, him. He always thought he knew me so well that I had endured all those years of mistreatment just to stay close to my parents, longing for their love. But now everything before him filled him with dread. Unwilling to give up, Ji Yunshu searched the courtyard. But as time passed, he began to panic as he realized all traces of me had vanished. When I was 15, I planted a crab-apple tree in the courtyard for him, and it was gone. When I was 17, I made a wish for him. The red ribbon that once hung from the swing in the courtyard had vanished. Ji Yunshu hurried to the parasol tree just outside the courtyard. He remembered I loved sitting beneath it the most, where I buried my deepest secrets into the earth, my longing for my parents' love and approval, and my silent affection for him. All of it was hidden in a small jar beneath the parasol tree soil, until he saw what lay before him. And in that moment, Ji Yunshu was struck as if by lightning. The soil had been dug open, The jar shattered, and all my secrets had turned to ash. At that moment, Ji Yunshu finally realized something grave. I had truly left. Ji Yunshu crouched beneath the parasol tree, staring blankly at the pile of ashes. My departure had long been foreshadowed, but no one had ever cared. A child unloved would leave with such finality. I burned the gifts he had given me, destroyed every beautiful memory, and didn't even take a single fallen leaf with me. Ji Yunshu had only agreed to marry Song Jingnian to fulfill his wish. He had never said he would abandon me, so why did I have to leave? Even now, Ji Yunshu couldn't understand. He only felt the heavy summer air grow stifling, pressing hard against his chest. A wave of hot wind swept through, scattering parasol leaves all around. Ji Yunshu looked up in a daze, lifting his head, as if he saw the boy I once was, the one who had been abandoned by his family, crying in sorrow beneath that very tree. He reached out to me, smiling as he promised I would never be alone again. That night, under the cool light of the moon, there was a spark in my eyes, but I don't know when it began, that I started to grow numb, like a walking corpse, returning to the way I once was. Maybe it was when he offered my place at Peking University in exchange for that fake marriage certificate, especially when he saw the shock on my face. In truth, he had always known about my silent love for him. Ji Yunshu had always known, but he had never responded, afraid of gossip, until my parents approached him, asking him to persuade me to give up my spot at Peking University to Song Jingnian. Ji Yunshu didn't refuse, even though he must have understood how important Peking University was to me. But in that moment, looking for a reason to marry, Ji Yunshu foolishly made that proposal, never expecting I would agree without hesitation. He thought with my strong grades, I'd surely ace next year's entrance exams again. Then all the gossip would be silenced, and they could be together as planned. But unfortunately, it seemed I had misunderstood. I chose to let go of everything, and left without looking back. I hadn't gone far yet. Ji Yunshu suddenly thought of something, and shot to his feet. Thinking I had nowhere else to go, he mobilized every connection he had, searching both bus stations and train terminals, determined to find me. But even after half a day, Ji Yunshu had exhausted all the district's resources, and still there was no sign of me. It was as if I had vanished into thin air. The matter reached Ji Jiangwo's ears. A daughter abusing power was a serious issue at the time. He rushed home in a panic, but when he saw his daughter sitting outside the door in despair, the anger caught in his throat and turned into a heavy sigh. Ji Jiangwo had already guessed the truth. First, he called off the search for me. "You're going to make a terrible mistake." Then he voiced his suspicion. Xu Yuan left to study. Ji Yunshu jerked his head up, his face filled with disbelief. Wasn't the Peking University admission letter supposed to come in half a month? Ji Jiangwo gave a cold laugh and said, "Who told you Xu Yuan went to Peking University? He applied to the National Defense University." Ji Yunshu felt like he had been struck by lightning. Ji Jiangwo couldn't bear to see his daughter like that anymore. Thinking back on all the treatment I've endured over the years, I felt like iron that couldn't be forged into steel. I didn't even know what he was so upset about. When I was right in front of him, he never cherished me. And now that I'm gone, who is his sorrow even for? Wasn't it them who forced me to leave? That one sentence from Ji Jiangwo hit home. Ji Yunshu's body turned numb. He opened his mouth to refute, but not a single word came out. Countless memories surged through his mind. All these years, my parents had favored Song Jingnian to an almost twisted extent. I was tormented, driven to despair. He clearly knew and once understood me. But what did he do? Not only did he stop standing firmly by my side like before, he even helped them brand me as wicked. He sided with them. He suddenly remembered 3 days ago. When I pushed Song Jingnian down the stairs, I looked at him with the same look as before, full of hope, hoping to receive just a shred of kindness. But Ji Yunshu had not only believed Song Jingnian without hesitation, He had slapped me hard. That slap shattered all my expectations. Ji Jiangwo knew that nothing he said now would reach his daughter, and he no longer cared to speak. Judging by how the Yi family and his daughter had behaved, I should have left long ago. I was a good child. Only by leaving my birth family could I ever find happiness. It was a pity he had offered help so early on. But I was stubborn by nature, still holding out hope for my parents. So I ended up suffering so much misfortune. If it were him, he would have cursed them out long ago. Ji Jiangwo dropped those words coldly and strode away. As a military leader, he had no time for his children's personal affairs. Ji Yunshu stood in the living room, recalling all my recent reactions. Maybe I had already given up from the moment of that exchange. He remembered that night, when I asked him in a deeply serious tone, "Do you still remember the promise you made me?" Ji Yunshu collapsed to the ground, clutching his head in anguish, overwhelmed with regret. The night was as cold as water. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed outside. My mother burst into the house, her expression a mix of panic and fear. "Yunshu, Ji Nian thought you didn't want him anymore, so he went crazy at the restaurant." Ji Yunshu listened to her non-stop chatter. All she talked about was worrying for Ji Nian. His mind filled with frustration. He suddenly lifted his head. "What's the point of him going crazy looking for me? In your eyes, there's only Song Jingnian. Do you even know where your real son went?" My mother looked shocked and slightly embarrassed. "What are you talking about? How could I not care about Chuyuan? He's my biological son." Ji Yunshu stared at her, searching her eyes for the slightest trace of concern, but found none. She had been impatient with me from beginning to end. Ji Yunshu felt utterly disappointed. Looking out the window, he spoke calmly. "Chuyuan went off to school. He's never coming home again." My mother's face turned pale. She grabbed Ji Yunshu's arm, her eyes flaring with anger. "What school is he going to? Didn't he agree to give the Peking University spot to Ji Nian? That's not right. The admission letter isn't due for another half a month. That boy has been rebellious since he was little, always lying. Once he gets back, I must give him a proper lesson." Ji Yunshu's heart trembled. He felt sorrow on my behalf. I was already gone, yet my own mother was still blaming me. Suddenly, he lost all patience and flung her hand aside, his voice cold and detached. "Chuyuan enrolled at the National Defense University, not Peking University." My mother's face darkened, and she cursed viciously. "What right does he have to go to the National Defense University? What about Ji Nian? We've already told everyone there's going to be a celebration banquet." What was Chuyuan thinking? How could he not want to see Ji Nian do well? "No, you have to bring him back. No matter what, he must give up the Peking University spot." My mother grabbed Ji Yunshu's hand and dragged him outside with force, as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. Ji Yunshu tried to break free, but one sentence from her silenced him. Jingnian slit his wrists. He lost a lot of blood. Ji Yunshu hesitated, visibly conflicted. With no other choice, he followed her to the hospital. After all, it was because I left that Song Jingnian had a mental breakdown. He felt somewhat responsible. On the way there, Ji Yunshu had already made up his mind. He would come clean once Song Jingnian was stable, and never interfere in his matters again. Ji Yunshu only wanted to find me as soon as possible and tell me the truth. When they arrived outside the hospital room, just as they were about to push open the door, they heard Song Jingnian singing. It didn't sound like a depressive episode. In fact, he sounded rather cheerful. For some reason, Ji Yunshu felt something was off about him. He remembered what I had said before, that my cousin's depression was just an act, that he wasn't sick. He only wanted to take everything from me. Back then, Ji Yunshu had thought I was just lying out of jealousy. But now, after seeing my despair, his perspective began to shift. Ji Yunshu stopped my mother and shook his head slightly. signaling her not to rush to listen to what Song Jingnian was saying first. My father had gone to fetch water. Inside the room, only Song Jingnian remained. He didn't look the slightest bit ill, lounging on the bed, legs crossed, laughing smugly. That laugh could drive anyone mad. I stole their parents from him. Took the Peking University spot for myself. Now even the fiancé is mine, even though it's a fake marriage. As long as I stir up a fuss, those two idiots will definitely help me and force her into the bridal chamber. Once I have her body, why would I fear her backing out of the marriage? I really am too clever. Song Jingnian's voice was quiet, but the room was so silent that the two of them outside heard everything clearly. My mother stood frozen, her face filled with disbelief. She thought she'd misheard. Ji Yunshu clenched his fists tightly. A wave of seething rage erupted within him. He had just heard the truth. Song Jingnian had been faking it all along, and openly admitted to stealing everything from me. First the parents, then the Peking University spot, and finally me. Ji Yunshu felt a chill creep into his heart. Never had he dared to imagine that someone could be so malicious, calling me a bastard, calling the Yi parents idiots. This from the always obedient, well-mannered Song Jingnian. Ji Yunshu turned to look at my mother, his heart overwhelmed with sorrow. For someone like that, she had personally driven away her real son. Wasn't that laughable after all I'd gone through? Ji Yunshu wanted to slap himself. They had all been wrong. Terribly wrong. Completely manipulated. Especially when Song Jingnian said that last line about turning raw rice into cooked rice. Ji Yunshu shuddered uncontrollably. He couldn't hold back any longer and kicked the door wide open. Song Jingnian still wore that smug smile until his body went stiff. His expression twisted in panic. "Sister, how long have you been standing there?" Before Ji Yunshu could answer, my mother stepped forward and yanked his collar, her voice full of fury. "Why did you lie to me?" Song Jingnian knelt on the floor in terror, but his eyes darted about, clearly scheming how to turn things around. My mother's face turned deathly pale. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. She had treated Song Jingnian like her own son, even promising to pluck the stars from the sky for him, neglecting me because of him. And yet what had Song Jingnian done? Calling his cousin a bastard and her a fool. My mother raised her hand to slap him. Song Jingnian let out a wail and scrambled to his knees, pleading for mercy, begging her not to hit him.